Hello, welcome back to Hassan Narrates. In a small town, there lived an old shoemaker named Samuel. His shop stood at the end of the narrow street. It was small, quiet, and old. The sign above the door was faded. The paint was peeling, and very few customers came anymore. Most people bought cheap factory made shoes from the city. Samuel's handmade shoes took time, and time was expensive. Business became slower every year. Samuel lived alone. His wife had passed away many years earlier. His children had moved far away. Most days he worked quietly in his little shop. The sound of his hammer filled the room. Tap, tap, tap. Sometimes an entire day passed without a single customer. Money became tight, very tight. Some nights he ate only bread and soup, yet he never complained. One winter, the town faced a terrible cold season. Snow covered the streets. The wind howled through the town. People hurried indoors. Businesses became even worse. Even evening, Samuel counted his savings. There was barely enough money left. If things did not improve, he might have to close this shop forever. The next morning, Samuel noticed something unusual. A young boy stood outside his window. The boy looked around 10 years old. His clothes were thin. His face was pale from the cold, and his shoes were falling apart. Large holes exposed his feet. Samuel watched him for several minutes. The boy started at a pair of shoes displayed in the window. Then he quietly walked away. The same boy returned. Again he stood in front of the window. Again he stared at the shoes. And again he left. On the third day, Samuel stepped outside. "Hello, young man." The boy looked nervous. "Do you like these shoes?" The boy nodded. "They're beautiful." Samuel smiled. "So why don't you buy them?" The boy looked down. "Because I can't." The boy explained that his mother worked long hours cleaning houses. They struggled to pay rent. Food came first, shoes came later. The boy never complained. He understood their situation, but winter was becoming harder every day. Samuel listened carefully. Then he looked at the boy's worn out shoes, and his heart broke. That evening, Samuel sat alone in his workshop. He stared at the last pair of shoes he had finished. They were his finest works. Strong leather, perfect stitching, beautiful craftsmanship. He had hoped to sell them. The money would help him survive another month, maybe longer. Yet he could not stop thinking about that boy. The next morning, the boy returned. As usual, he stood outside the window. But this time, Samuel opened the door. "Come inside." The boy hesitated, then stepped in. Samuel handed him the shoes. The boy's eyes widened. "I can't pay for those." Samuel smiled. "I know." The boy stared in disbelief. "Then why are you giving this to me?" Samuel's answer was simple. "Because you need them more than I do." The boy tried on the shoes. They fit perfectly. For a moment he said nothing. Then tears filled his eyes. Nobody had ever given him something so valuable. Before leaving, he hugged Samuel tightly. It was a small moment, but neither of them would ever forget it. Time moved on. Samuel grew older. His little shop eventually closed. And one day, the old shoemaker passed away. Many people in town barely noticed, but one person never forgot him, the boy. 20 years later, a luxury car stopped outside of the old shop. A successful businessman stepped out. He looked at the building quietly. Then he smiled. It was the boy, the same boy who once stood barefoot in the snow. Those shoes had carried him through school, through difficult years, and through a life he never thought possible. The businessman purchased the old building. People wondered why. A few months later, they got their answer. A new sign appeared above the door. It read, Samuel's Workshop. Inside was a free shoe repair center for families who could not afford one. Every year, hundreds of children received shoes. No payment required. A reporter once asked the businessman why he spent so much money helping strangers. His answer was simple. When I was a child, one man saw me standing in the cold. He had almost nothing, but he gave me his everything. And I have been trying to repay that kindness ever since. The moral of the story is, kindness is like a seed. You may never see where it grows. You may never know whose life it changes. But one small act of kindness can travel further than you will ever imagine.